But this is so humiliating.
So you got pinched in the elevator. So what? Would you rather be picking lead out of your navel?
All right, but how long do you think we can keep this up?
What's the beef? We're sitting pretty. We got room and board. We get paid every week. Just look outside. Look at the palm trees. Look at the ocean. Look at the flying fish.
What are you giving me with the flying fish?
Good evening.
Good evening.
Wait.
Okay,
What?
okay.
Let's do the intros, okay?
Okay.
I'm Gila Drazen,
I'm Rob Vincent.
but I heard a third voice. So let's try this one more time.
All right.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello.
Wait a second. I'm hearing three voices.
1.
2.
3.
Hi, I'm Gila Drazen.
Hi, I'm Rob Vincent.
And there's a third voice here.
There is.
I'm the mystery guest.
So, yes, this is episode 109 of Modern Technology Watches, and it's the first episode to feature a special in-studio guest.
Special in-studio guest.
Special Mr. Guest, would you enter and sign in, please?
Maitland W. Montmorency.
The inventor of the Montmorency cherry?
My name's really Joe Smith. I just have terrible handwriting.
Special Mr. Guest, would you actually introduce yourself, please?
Yes, my name is Susie Drazen.
Wow, what a
Wait,
coincidence.
that's the same name I have.
Yeah. Are you two related?
Well, now that you mention it,
Yes, we are.
We are.
We are.
Can you hear it?
Can you hear it?
Yes, I can hear the resemblance. Listeners, Susie Drazen is the lovely mother of my lovely wife, Gila Drazen. My mother-in-law is on this episode.
Yes, I am Rob's Ema-in-law.
Yes, and we also have charged our special guest with, well, first of all, Ema, you said you had an issue with something that I said on the Without Warning episode.
Yes, we do accept listener emails and comments and responses to what we do, tweets even, but...
In fact, if you send in the first listener email to Modern Technology Watches, you get to be a guest.
I did.
Is how this one worked
I
out.
did.
Apparently,
I
yes.
did, and I am.
Yes,
I did, and I am.
You sent a listener email, and but now you're here, you're in town, and so would you like to deliver your thoughts in person?
If memory serves me correctly, and please let me know if I'm misquoting, I believe that you disparaged David L. Wolper, whom I remember as a premier documentarian. And I just thought that someone who remembered his work before... Did he do Roots?
Yes.
Yes, before Roots should check in. And that's me.
Okay.
That is you.
That is you, and we appreciate that.
We were talking, for those who didn't listen, we were talking a little bit about David Wolper in our previous episode 108, which was about the television movie Without Warning.
The television spectacle, really.
Yes.
And what I said, was that David L. Wolper was a master of event television. Mm-hmm. I don't think I said anything disparaging. I just said event television.
But he did more than event television.
Okay, that's fair.
Okay.
That's fair. And I also realized why I said that.
Okay.
Because in the seminal 1980s Jewish humor book, Growing Up Jewish, by Rabbi Jack Moline, they talked about a 10 Commandments special event that was going to be produced by David L. Wolper because he knew from Spectacle. And it must have implanted in my brain.
Okay.
When I was 6 years old and far too young to read that book.
Fair enough.
I still have it. Okay. I still have it. I still have our copy.
So I had my say.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
And we thank you, and I'm sure David Wolper thanks you.
For his grandchildren.
From beyond the grave at
yes,
this point.
Yes.
Long distance thank you.
The other perk of being a special guest on a Modern Technology Watches episode is that the special guest picks the film.
Yes.
And I did.
Usually, Gila and I will pick films from our own library to show each other, but this time you've brought something that is a surprise to both of us.
Yes, and for some reason, on every third episode, we do step out a little bit. Like episode 3, we saw Rocketman. Mm-hmm. Episode 6, we went to the Coney Island Film Festival for The Warriors.
Yeah, that was a bit non-standard.
And this is 109.
Okay.
And Ema picked the movie.
Yes, I did.
And
Funny how that works out.
Right?
Yes, I did.
So,
I did.
Lay it on us, Mother dear.
My guess is that when you see what it is, you will certainly not be surprised. You may be surprised. Let me just say that this movie has a lot of sentimental significance.
Okay.
All right.
All right. So, what you got?
She's producing a DVD. Oh, wow.
Oh, my goodness. Oh, my goodness. Okay. So, we are going to watch Some Like It Hot. 1959's Some Like It Hot.
One of Billy Wilder's comic masterpieces.
Right, and it stars Jack Lemmon and that famous blonde-haired woman who...
Jack
of
Lemmon,
note.
Tony Curtis, and Marilyn Monroe.
Okay,
and
so-
an amazing cast of supporting players.
All right. So, I will, as is our custom, read the back of the DVD case.
Yes, if you would do the honors.
Absolutely. The heat is on. Marilyn Monroe, Tony Curtis, and Jack Lemmon star in Some Like It Hot, hailed by the American Film Institute as the funniest American movie of all time. When two Chicago musicians accidentally witness the St. Valentine's Day Massacre, they trade in their union suits for flapper frocks and hightail it down to Florida as the newest members of an all-girl jazz band. Jam-packed with an amazing selection of brand new bonus features, the Some Like It Hot Collector's Edition is a comic salute to one of the greatest of all film comedies, Zowie.
Zowie, indeed.
Now, honey, have you seen this?
I haven't seen it in about 100 years. I remember I saw it as a kid
was-
on broadcast television, I'm sure, with commercials.
And it was, yes, you absolutely did. I mean, that was how I saw it
Yeah,
the first time.
I've never been someone who got really into Marilyn Monroe's work, but you know, I seem to remember enjoying this one. Always loved Jack Lemmon. Always loved Tony Curtis.
I remember watching this movie on New Year's Eve. I remember, watching this movie on New Year's Eve, and then we finished it at 11 o'clock Central Time, and you said, Happy New Year on the East Coast, and we all went to bed. So I have an idea.
Yes.
Let's watch it.
Fine.
And then we'll come back.
Yes.
And then we'll talk about it.
Absolutely.
Excellent.
And, we'll eat because,
Thank you for allowing me to do this.
hey, we're really excited.
I am definitely excited. Also, I do not say no when my mother-in-law asks a favor. So
Smart man. Smart man.
That he is.
I didn't get to be married for nearly a year and a half without learning a thing or two.
Just remember, dear, who proposed to whom.
This is true. We might have to tell that story after the break.
Okay, so with that in mind, we will see you in a bit after 1959's comedy classic, Some Like It Hot.
Some Like It Hot.
And if you haven't seen it, oh my God, what is wrong with you? But if you haven't seen it, you're going to want to watch it before we talk about it.
Do yourself a favor. You won't be sorry.
Absolutely.
I mean, I know that nobody's perfect, but everybody should see this movie.
All right.
All right,
let's
Some
go.
Like It Hot. Guys, are we back?
I guess we're back.
Yeah.
Okay, we are back. We have watched Some Like It Hot, the 1959 comedy classic, Some Like It Hot, family fave.
Which,
Absolutely.
if memory serves me correctly, was a remake of an old German movie. The concept is not a new one, but I like the way that they did it. I also liked the casting, because in addition to the three main characters, I thought that Billy Wilder chose really a myriad of some of Hollywood's best comic character actors.
I think that's a very fair assessment.
Yeah, it was definitely sort of a who's who. And it's funny because I was reading some of the IMDb trivia earlier today. We should actually say this is the following day for those of you who have been listening along. We watched the film last night.
We watched the film last night. We let it percolate.
We did.
We slept.
We slept.
And here we are, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, and ready to break it down for you.
Also, should I say what today is?
It's Sunday.
It's Sunday.
It's Sunday.
It's a particular Sunday. It is also your birthday.
It is my
Gila.
birthday. It's my birthday, and it's Ema's birthday.
Yes, it is the day in which I became an Ema.
Although, if we're getting very technical, I wasn't born yet.
No, you weren't, but it is today.
Yes.
No question about that.
Yes. You were laboring.
Yes. No need to belabor the point. Ha 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 ha. Okay.
I see what you both did there.
On to Some Like It Hot.
Yes.
Yes, Susie. And this was a great movie. We were both pleasantly surprised, as you heard earlier, by this movie. What led you to select it to bring?
It is absolutely one of my favorite films. There was a phenomenon when I was growing up, which was Saturday night at the movies, which took place in the 60s, and it was on NBC. And it was during what I guess would be now called prime time. Mm-hmm. And NBC, it was called Saturday Night at the Movies. And they showed movies probably from the last 10 or 15 years. And it was with commercial breaks, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know if the movies were cut or if they were not. But this is one of those movies that I very much remember watching, and watching with my family. Now, if you remember correctly, as they're getting on the train, they talk about the Sheboygan Conservatory of Music. Mm-hmm. My hometown was Sheboygan, Wisconsin. So this was definitely one of our family favorites for that reason, if nothing else. And it's a very funny, fast-paced, clever movie.
It really is.
Yeah. And Grandpa really liked this one, right?
We all did.
Well, yeah.
We all did, yes. Yes.
And how old do you think you were when you saw it the first time?
8 or 9.
Okay, I think I was also. I remember when we got it on VHS.
Right.
It was a long time ago.
And the thing now is, if you can't get, if you don't have access to a DVD, et cetera, I'm quite confident that it is shown off and on Turner Classic Movies.
There's no question.
It's got to be.
But I think does it get shown during 31 or 30 however many days of Oscar?
I believe it does.
Okay, because it was not nominated. It didn't win Best Picture. I don't think it was even nominated for Best Picture, which absolutely blows my mind.
But what else was it up against that year is ultimately the question.
That is true. And Jack Lemmon got nominated.
Well, he should have.
I mean, they're individual nominations.
Right.
Yeah, and it won Best Costume Design at the Academy Awards, and it was nominated for Best Director, Best Actor, Best Adapted Screenplay, Best Cinematography, Black and White, Best Art Direction, Black and White, but it won for Best Costume Design.
Mm-hmm.
For Ori Kelly?
For Ori Kelly.
Right. I don't know that I'd say that Marilyn Monroe was playing a caricature of herself, but they certainly were pulling no punches in terms of, this is one very, very sexy, curvy lady, and we're going to show it off to everyone's advantage.
Yeah, they had Marilyn Monroe, and damn it, they used her.
Yeah.
But knowing what we know about her behavior on set was also part of it. Just, you could get her into her dresses and she could stand there.
Yeah.
And, basically... I don't want to say objectify her, but objectify her because when she was there, which was apparently not often.
Right.
And she was having a hard time remembering her lines. Like, she did not do well on the set of this movie.
Yeah, there are all kinds of stories of them writing her lines like inside the drawers that she was putting stuff in, and on other stuff that she could just,
Except what I've been given to understand was that she was talented. She took her acting very, very seriously, but her very fragile emotional health made it very difficult for her to be the disciplined, serious person that I really do think ultimately she wanted to be. Yeah,
exactly. I mean, she had the whole Marilyn Monroe persona of the sort of the breathy, sex symbol-y, for want of a better term, the dumb blonde. But by many accounts, she knew what she was doing. And she knew what she was making a career of, and she went for it. But like a lot of people do describe her as an extremely intelligent person.
She was a very intelligent person. There are stories that come from the scene, the set of the movie The Prince and the Showgirl. If you remember correctly, there was a movie, gosh, it may be 10 years ago already, My Week with Marilyn.
It was 2011.
Okay, so it's not 10 years ago, but it's a while ago.
Yes.
And Sir Laurence Olivier found it very difficult to work with Marilyn Monroe, but he also said that the camera absolutely loved her. She knew how to play to the camera.
She certainly did. And just looking at, I've got the Wikipedia article open here, and in addition to that Oscar for costume design, it won the December 1959 National Board of Review Awards. It was in the top 10 there. Best Foreign Actor in the British Academy Film Awards for Jack Lemmon. The Golden Globes, it picked up Best Actor in a Motion Picture Comedy or Musical for Jack Lemmon, Best Actress in a Motion Picture Comedy or Musical for Marilyn, and Best Motion Picture Musical or Comedy. Writers Guild of America Awards, it was the Best Written Comedy. The Laurel Awards, it was Top Female Comedy Performance for Marilyn, Top Male Comedy Performance for Jack Lemmon, Top Comedy, it got third place. Best Actor International got second place for Tony Curtis, or no, that was just a nomination at the Bambi Awards, whatever those are.
The Bambi Awards?
Yeah.
What are the Bambi Awards?
The Bambi, often simply called the Bambi Award, are presented annually by Hubert Burda Media to recognize excellence in international media and television, blah, blah, blah.
Huh.
So, yeah, it won a pile of awards.
Who knew that in reviewing in talking about a 60-year-old movie, we would actually learn something new?
Yes.
But isn't that the whole point of doing this?
Well, yes, it certainly is.
That we learn new things.
The Bambi Awards.
One thing we generally do on this program is go through the cast list.
Do you want to go from the bottom up?
Yeah, that's a good idea. We can go the bottom up here. The very bottom, uncredited Al Brenneman is the young bellboy.
Mm-hmm. The one who kept on snapping his bow tie.
Yes,
The serial harasser.
Right, right.
and the one who was a very short fellow of slight build whose outfit Jack Lemmon fits perfectly into later somehow.
Yeah.
Tom Kennedy as the gangster at the funeral parlor, uncredited. Beverly Wills as Dolores, a trombone player and Sugar's apartment friend.
Right. I mean, wasn't she the one who kept on wanting to tell the story about the one-legged jockey? And if memory serves me correctly, her mother was Joan Davis, who was an early television comedian.
Yes, she was the child of comedian Joan Davis and actor and writer Cy Wills. Edward G. Robinson Jr. as Johnny Paradise, a gangster who kills Spats Colombo.
Oh, so he was the guy in the cake.
Yeah, he was the son of Edward G. Robinson,
Okay.
The. This also seems like a really good time to mention, as per usual, that yes, this movie is 60 years old, but if you haven't seen it, pause this, go watch it, because spoilers everywhere.
Yes.
But you should watch it because it's just fun.
Yeah,
That's also true.
It's incredibly enjoyable.
There's no question about any of that. But
Right.
all I'm saying
Yes,
is don't
no.
get mad at us for spoiling
Right,
anything.
right.
Also, this movie is 60 years old, and how have you not seen it yet?
Right.
Because
Well, not everyone's seen it, but like it is one
Because
of
it is
one of
60
the
years
canonical
old.
best films ever.
Right.
Absolutely. It's when the AFI did their top comedies list, it was number 1. When the AFI did the top 100 American films, it was number 8, I think. Like, it's gotten a lot of deserved. It's gotten a lot of love, deservedly so.
absolutely.
Absolutely. But yeah, so if you haven't seen it, you should see it.
Right. It's recommended. I don't think it's spoiling the end of this podcast to say that we all really like the film. Harry Wilson is Spat's henchman. Mike Mazurki is Spat's henchman. George E. Stone is Toothpick Charlie.
George E. Stone was someone that you used to see in very old movies. He was in the 1931 film adaptation of Edna Ferber's book Cimarron about Oklahoma Territory, and he played the Jewish shopkeeper. He could very easily blend into the background, but he always worked. He always worked.
He was also Earl Williams in the 1931 version, film version of The Front Page.
Oh, right.
Not the one later with Jack Lemmon and Walter Matthau, but the one before that.
Right. Right, and then of course there was a remake of the front page with Cary Grant and Rosalind Russell.
Yes, his Girl Friday.
Right.
Which I think we might have. But yeah, one of those character actors. There were so many of those sort of stock gangster character actors in this movie playing the stock gangsters, which, fits.
Who was the one? He was one of Spatz's fellows who had that voice that he sounded like.
Oh, yeah, boss.
Oh yeah, the big dumb guy.
Oh, yeah, boss.
Yeah, we was with you at Rigoletto's.
Yes.
Yeah.
That guy.
That wasn't Mike Mazurki. That was one of the other guys. Mike Mazurki you saw Mike Mazurki in he was in Donovan's Reef, which was a John Ford movie. He had a bit part in an episode of I Love Lucy. You saw him around a lot.
Yeah,
He's a big guy.
Looking at a picture of him now, he's another one of those, like, he was a gangster in every gangster thing.
Right.
Barbara Drew as Nellie Weinmeier, Polyakov's secretary.
Who played Polyakov?
He's next up on the list. Billy Gray as Sig Polyakov,
Got it.
Joe and Jerry's agent in Chicago.
It was, again, he was on screen for, 5 minutes? But it was just a crack-up. It was
Absolutely.
just a crack-up.
Dave Barry as Mr. Beanstalk.
Oh, God.
Beanstalk.
Not the Dave Barry who writes humor columns in Florida, but Dave Barry, who he played Mr. Beanstalk, the band manager for Sweet Sue and her Society Syncopators.
Beanstalk.
And one of the fun things about that is it's Beanstalk spelled Bienstock, but of course it's Beanstalk as in Jack in the.
Of course.
Joan Shawley as Sweet Sue, the band leader of Sweet Sue and her Society Syncopators.
What else did she do?
She was Buddy Sorrell's wife, Pickles, who
Pickles.
was a former showgirl on the original Dick Van Dyke Show.
Yes.
Okay.
Pickles, who you heard about all the time, but she almost never showed up.
Pickles Sorrell.
Yes.
Pickles. What was Pickles short for?
Honey,
Or
I have no
a nickname.
idea. I
Sure.
have
She
no
was just
idea.
I
Pickles.
am, by the way, as a side note, always fascinated by nicknames from the 40s and 50s
Right.
and how you get to one from the other.
Yeah.
You know,
Pickles.
how do you get to
Well,
Mitzi from
by the way,
Phyllis?
I'm convinced that Pickles, they named her Pickles because things with K sounds are funny.
No, absolutely.
So
Pickle is funny. Cucumber is funny.
Yeah.
tomatoes
is not funny.
Tomatoes not funny. Okay.
Yeah.
Nehemiah Persoff
Nehemiah Persoff was Little Bonaparte.
Little Bonaparte, who was basically Mussolini.
Yes.
But as a mob
Oh my God.
boss.
So I have to tell you, it took me such a long time when we were watching it to figure out what he had on his ear. It did not. I was like, is that a microphone? I was so incredibly. It didn't occur to me at all that was a hearing aid. And
Yeah.
I'm embarrassed to admit it, but in front of you two
It's a beer
and however
Gila.
many listen, it's a beer crumpet. It's a beer crumpet.
Right.
And then I was thinking about the part in Bells on Their Toes when they all went shopping, and he was just like, the dude turned off his hearing aid. Yeah. And that moment when Little Bonaparte turns it down
Yes.
because
Right.
during the gunfire, kind of amazing.
It's kind of a great gag. And of course, this being an old chunky hearing aid, which was of the type where you had the big thing on your ear that had a wire that went down to a box that you would keep in like a shirt pocket.
Right.
But
which
he was wearing it on his
Yeah.
he was wearing it on his jacket
Right,
pocket.
but again, that was a big deal that technology could do that for you.
No, absolutely.
Joe E. Brown as Osgood Fielding III.
Joe E. Brown, he had this thing. He had an incredibly wide mouth that he could open really far, and he was known. I think he was in a Mad World, and he has to
Yes.
get the crowd's attention.
Yes, that's where I remember him from.
Yes. He played Captain Andy in the 1951 Showboat, and everybody knew who he was. He was incredibly recognizable. He'd been in a lot of things. He entertained troops during World War II. I believe his son died in the war, and he was a comic actor. And there was a lot more to him than just that. He was very versatile.
But also that face he had.
Yes, that face and that mouth. It was
which is
amazing.
Great for the character.
Yeah, there was this smile that I did as a small child, and it freaks Rob out terribly. But it was the one that I was like, I'm a big kid, and I would smile, and the cords in my neck would stand
Right.
out, and that's what his face looks like.
Except the cords in his neck didn't stand out. But
Right,
that thing,
that's just his face.
that thing that is zowie. I mean, it just cracked me up.
Basically, the guy has the hinged head of a Muppet. It's
Right,
great.
right.
Pat O'Brien as Agent Mulligan.
Pat O'Brien, again, had been around forever. Pat O'Brien was from Milwaukee. He had grown up with Spencer Tracy, and they started out together as young actors trying to find their way. And I mean, to me, he always played the same character. He either played an Irish cop or he played he played a Catholic priest. And I don't remember him as a bad guy. He always played a good guy.
Yeah, in this he's the G-man. He's the FBI guy, but
but very no nonsense.
I think he was in a lot of stuff with Cagney.
He was.
Yeah.
He was.
Like,
he
just
was under
that whole era.
He was under. I believe he was under contract to Warner Brothers. I could be wrong. I believe he played Father Duffy in The Fighting 69th. And I mean, I remember him as again later, but he was a constant on talk shows. He was quite a personality.
And yes, he was Father Duffy. Bringing that up, he was Father Duffy in The Fighting 69th.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think he was the priest in Angels Have Dirty Faces.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, he was the good guy in the gangster genre, basically.
Right.
George Raft as Spats Colombo, a mobster from Chicago.
George Raft, in addition to always playing a gangster, George Raft started out as a dancer. George Raft was an excellent dancer. There's a Cagney movie that I'm blanking on the name from the early 30s, and you have to look quickly or you'll miss him. But George Raft is the guy who's always winning in the dance contests. And a side note, and again, this is a huge spoiler, but that tango scene, or those tango scenes which are just too much, nobody had any idea what to do. So George Raft worked with Joey Brown and Jack Lemmon, the three of them tangoing. People who saw it said it was worth the price of admission, but they would not have been able to do it if it hadn't been for George Raft.
I can imagine. Now we're up to the big ones. Jack Lemmon as Jerry, Gerald, or Daphne, a double bass player. Jack Lemmon.
Jack Lemmon.
I mean, if you just grew up watching movies when we did, you'd recognize him as he was Felix in the Odd Couple film, and I think he did it on Broadway. And he would play that type of role a lot, like in the 80s and 90s, the sort of prim and proper kind of nebbish dude. But
grumpy old man.
Yeah, grumpy
and
old man.
grumpier old men. Dad,
which was a sweet movie, but
My Fellow American,
and a very dark movie that he did in the early 70s called Save the Tiger, where to me he played against type.
right.
He and Jack Guilford were business partners, and again, it's very, very dark. That's Life with Julie Andrews and directed by Blake Edwards.
and of course The Apartment.
The Apartment. If I had not brought this one, we would have done The Apartment.
This is more fun, though.
Well, it is more fun, but The Apartment, again, it's Billy Wilder.
Yeah.
Dark, but it's Billy Wilder. But Jack Lemmon is an actor that I would watch the movie just because he was in it. I didn't care.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I didn't care.
But in this movie, like if you were familiar with his other stuff of kind of being the straight man or the prim and proper dude, like in this one, he goes nuts and it's glorious. Like he just like his facial expressions. He does another kind of perfect slow burn type of thing in the beginning where like he's trying to be the reasonable guy, but he just goes more and more manic. And
it's amazing.
And that's before he even gets into the drag.
But his range, when you think about it, Some Like It Hot over here, and then The Days of Wine and Roses over there. I mean, oh my God! And he could do it all. And I absolutely adored him.
Yeah, he was one of the greats.
And an amazing talent, and he didn't squander it.
Oh, and he went for it. Tony Curtis as Josephine Shell Oil Jr., a saxophone player. Now, what can be said about Tony Curtis beyond "Yonder lies the castle of my father"? Like,
Tony Curtis, the things that I liked Tony Curtis in, Houdini, which he starred with his then wife Janet Leigh. The other thing I really liked him in was Captain Newman, M.D., where he plays an orderly in a military hospital during World War II. The others in the cast are Gregory Peck, Angie Dickinson, Eddie Albert, and when I see Tony Curtis at this time in this movie, I get very sad because again, it was I think he was very talented, and then he like went off the rails, and his life, he could have done more, and he could have done better.
Yeah, but he certainly did a great deal. I mean, apart from like Spartacus and stuff, he was just
right.
He was always working. He was a very handsome dude. Well, father of Jamie Lee. I mean, and he is great in the double act with Jack Lemmon.
Yes,
Just the two of them
no
are
question.
fantastic duo.
They played off each other beautifully.
And right on top of the cast list, Marilyn Monroe as Sugar Cane Kowalczyk, a ukulele player and singer.
Do we ever actually see her playing the ukulele?
Yes, we do. On the train.
Okay.
On the train and later on the bandstand, playing is in quotes. I think with all the instruments in this movie.
True.
Not only Jack and Tony, but all the girls I think are very obviously miming their instruments. But you know, it doesn't take away from it.
It doesn't at all. Also, I think one of my favorite parts is when they're having that first rehearsal on the train, and Daphne is busy spinning around the bass, and then she's watching Marilyn Monroe walk, and she spins the bass around and starts playing the back of it.
Yeah.
Right, she's so oblivious.
It.
Right.
Yes.
Right. And sometimes I slap it. I mean,
Yeah, no, it's a great gag, but I can't picture anyone else doing this role apart from Marilyn Monroe.
no. Oh no. I mean,
It's one of those things that you hear about other people who could have been cast for something. You know, it's like you hear that the studio wanted Bette Midler to play Sister Mary Clarence in Sister Act. And you're like,
yes.
who could have done that but Whoopi Goldberg?
Right.
You hear about all kinds of stuff like that, and this is what worked correctly. And all the different machinations that went into the casting, and, you know, Tony Curtis was cast, and then the studio wanted a bigger name than Jack Lemmon, but then they got Marilyn Monroe, so they let Billy Wilder use Jack Lemmon. And the way the three of them played together was really lovely.
But there are so many weird alternate universe like could have beens for this particular movie. Just scrolling down the wiki article here, Billy Wilder's first idea for the role of Jerry was Frank Sinatra, but he never came to the audition. Jerry Lewis and Danny Kaye were also considered for the role of Jerry.
you know, in terms of the elasticity and you almost had to be bigger than yourself, which either of them could very easily do.
Right.
And but I agree with Gila. I can't imagine anybody else having done it.
Yeah. No. It's one of those things where like the end product is just so iconic that you can't imagine anything else. Apparently, Mitzi Gaynor was who Wilder had in mind at first before getting Marilyn, and this was after they had done the 7-Year Itch. So like he knew Marilyn. Fascinating stuff.
Absolutely. And like I, never having been a huge Frank Sinatra fan, I can't imagine him there. I can't.
Yeah.
I can't imagine him going deep enough to be ridiculous enough.
He could go deep enough to be serious. He could, and he did. But in terms of the broadness of the comedy that was needed for this, and at the same time reining it in, I'm not sure that he could have done it.
Yeah. I've never been much of a Sinatra fan myself, even though like my Italian family would disown me if they heard me say that. But the one movie of his that I've got is this movie called It's Only Money that he did with Groucho Marx in Groucho's later years. And in that he's the romantic lead and kind of slightly funny guy, but you know he's there with Groucho Marx, so no one else is going to be the comic relief in that movie. But even then, he's like, you know, Sinatra was attractive and you know he was good at what he did, but I don't think this is what he did. Like can you imagine Sinatra like going as all out in the drag stuff? Frank wouldn't do that.
Frank wouldn't do that. Thanks, Joe. Frank wouldn't do that.
I don't believe so. I just don't.
Frank would never do that.
Yeah. But
when they're on the train and they're in that first rehearsal, first of all, it's just fun watching the song is fun. I mean, they knew exactly what they were doing in terms of that was the song that they were going to do, and then having Marilyn Monroe dancing up and down and watching her from the back.
And just when she says, "Hey, Sheboygan."
Yes.
Right. But just one side note about Marilyn Monroe. A very dear family friend said that he overheard some teenage boys talking. Did not know, and the boys said they don't know what the big deal was about Marilyn Monroe. She was fat. That's what they said. Ooh. And what he said was, didn't they have eyes? I mean, she exuded sex appeal.
There's no question. One of the things that we were talking about last night, Rob and I were talking, was how did some of this stuff get past the censors in 1959?
I'll tell you, it's because this was not made with the cooperation of the Hayes office. There's no certification on it. They didn't even try.
Interesting. Because, okay, the dress that Marilyn Monroe is wearing in that first...
the two dresses she's wearing when you see her on the bandstand, both times.
Yes.
There is nothing left to the imagination.
None whatsoever. And we were talking about it, like the little glitter starbursts.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I don't know what everybody was making such a big deal about the dress she wore to sing Happy Birthday to President Kennedy, because these dresses were that much more so.
Yes.
The dress, the way it fitted, the lighting,
all of it. And
these are all the sorts of gown that she was famous for, where it's basically you have to be sewn into it.
Yep. The thing I also thought was interesting was that all the other girls in the band, including Sweet Sue, were wearing matching dresses. Mm-hmm. And then there was Sugar.
Yeah.
Who was the vocalist? I mean,
right. No, I mean, I get it.
In that respect, it makes perfect sense.
And it's also, if I'm not wrong, and I could be, it's very possible, the sartorial idiom of Sweet Sue and the Society Syncopators, to me, read very 20s.
It was, clearly it was supposed to.
Marilyn Monroe's dresses, not so much.
Well, I'm not even sure that you could put a time frame on Marilyn Monroe's dresses. And
her dresses were not of her time, like even in the 50s.
Right.
But another thing about her aesthetic in this film is that with everyone else, they made the attempt to do like the bob haircuts and the 20s atmosphere. And with her, it was just Marilyn Monroe from the then present day dropped into it, because there was no way you were going to really do much to change the image of Marilyn Monroe in this film.
With her, the only thing that I thought was at all that was not an anachronism on the costumes was the garter she wore around her leg, and then the rolled stockings. Everything else. Oh, I'm sorry. And in that first scene when they're rehearsing on the train, that fringed skirt that she's wearing.
Yeah,
that worked. But everything else was just an anachronism. And if we're going to talk about something anachronistic, Tony Curtis as Shell Oil Jr. doing the bad Cary Grant imitation.
Yes.
Cary Grant wasn't Cary Grant yet. I mean, talkies were brand new, and he was still playing bit parts.
Right.
So, the Judy thing that he was trying to emulate simply didn't exist, but it worked perfectly for this.
It did. It really did.
It was pretty fantastic. And just thinking about how much of the last line was improvised, right? Mm-hmm. But Billy Wilder. Oh. Can we just talk about Billy Wilder for a minute?
Yeah. Yeah, talk about Billy Wilder.
Mom?
Billy Wilder, the Austrian Jew, who got chased out of Germany after being very successful in the German film industry, and after Hitler rose to power, saw the handwriting on the wall and came to the United States, taught himself English, literally worked his way up, and he was a comic genius. There's no other way to put it.
No, it's true. And you think about, like, the set pieces in this movie that he wrote the movie. And...
yeah, he wrote, produced, directed, everything. It
probably was the gaffer. I had forgotten about the convention of Italian opera lovers.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
It was so funny.
But the dialogue, the casting, the sight gags. I mean, that business with, you knew when somebody got into the elevator, and you knew that it was going to go up and then we were going to hear, and it was going to come back down again.
Watch the arrow go back around the clock thing.
Right.
Yeah, the display.
And watching, like, at the end, when they were running around after, they had taken the bellhop guy's clothes, and Jack Lemmon is running around in a suit, a jacket, and high heels. Which, I mean, he walks better in high heels than I do.
He was an actor. He practiced. He practiced.
Understood. But,
like
I'm a
Jell-O.
I'm a girl. And
It's Jell-O on springs.
Yeah.
I tell you, it's a different sex.
And just Billy Wilder, like just his body of work, like you could get lost for months in just the sheer volume of stuff that he did, from the 30s, 40s, 50s, even into the 70s. He did that 70s version of the front page with Matthau and Lemmon. And I think that might have been one of the last things he did. But
later Wilder that my dad absolutely loved because it went so fast. You really had to pay attention. It was called 1, 2, 3. It starred Jimmy Cagney and Arlene Francis, and he is a representative of, I believe, I apologize, I don't remember if it's the Pepsi-Cola company or the Coca-Cola company, and they're in Germany. And it's fast, it's snappy, and I watch it sitting on the floor because I'm laughing so hard I don't want to fall off whatever I'm sitting on.
I think we've not gone into the plot yet.
we really haven't. We've talked about a couple of pieces.
We've talked about a couple of
We haven't
pieces.
done the plot, per se.
Yeah, there is quite a lengthy plot on Wikipedia about this. I can go through this quickly. We can do this in chunks and
Fantastic.
See what we have to say about bits and pieces. This from the Wikipedia article for Some Like It Hot. In February 1929 in Prohibition-era Chicago, Joe, Tony Curtis, is a jazz saxophone player and an irresponsible gambler and ladies' man. His sensible friend, Jerry, Jack Lemmon, is a jazz double bass player. They work in a speakeasy disguised as a funeral home owned by gangster Spats Colombo, George Raft.
Back up just a minute. The voice of Mr. Mozzarella.
Mr. Mozzarella. This
Mr.
is Mozzarella's
Mozzarella.
funeral home.
Right. That was Paul. I don't know if that was the actor Paul Frees.
Paul Frees, yes.
Or if that was just his voice. But I remember the first time I heard it and saying, he's on Rocky and Bullwinkle.
Yes. Paul Frees, he was in so many things. I think you still hear his voice in the Haunted Mansion at Disney. He was one of those voice actors who, if you've watched basically any cartoons made at any point in Paul Frees' life, he's probably in there somewhere. And he's a voice acting legend. And apparently, I was flipping through the trivia on IMDb. Apparently, there were some scenes where Tony Curtis was having trouble keeping up his lady voice, so Paul Frees dubbed it in.
Nothing surprises me.
The man was a genius.
Yes, he really was.
Who did Paul Frees play in Rocky and Bullwinkle?
He was a voice. He was a voice in Rocky and Bullwinkle.
Was
he Boris Badenoff?
I think he was Boris, but he was also like just 47 different background voices of one-shot characters throughout the whole thing.
Right.
But yeah, he was everywhere. And yeah, the gag of Mr. Mozzarella, the funeral homeowner, I enjoyed that.
I did, except mozzarella was not spelled correctly.
No, it was not spelled correctly, but whatever.
Yeah.
Made me a little bonkers.
Tipped off by informant Toothpick Charlie, Georgie Stone, the police, led by Treasury Agent Mulligan, Pat O'Brien, raid the joint. Joe and Jerry flee, only to accidentally witness Spats and his henchmen exacting revenge on Toothpick and his own gang, inspired by the real-life St. Valentine's Day massacre.
Can we just talk about the moment where Spats kicks the toothpick out of dead Toothpick Charlie's mouth?
Yes. And again, from the trivia that's floating around about this film, apparently he had trouble hitting the toothpick, and finally they painted up a nail to look like a toothpick, so he could see it and kick.
So he didn't kick Georgie Stone in the mouth.
Yeah, because you don't want to kick Georgie Stone in the mouth in your movie. That also, like, this movie is a comedy, and it's a hilarious comedy, but like the gangland slayings are kind of grim. For a comedy, it's dark.
They have to be, though,
but they do have to be.
They're grim and they're bloody, but it's kind of like in a comic book kind of a way,
yes,
like in a cartoon kind of a way.
Right.
Mm-hmm. It's a plot device.
Mm-hmm.
It's not meant to be anything else.
Right. But you can also really tell that this was not made with the Hays Code in mind, because like even though it was kind of cartoon violence, you still, when you saw the dead bodies later, like there were wet spots on the suits, like there were bullet holes, and it wasn't like graphic violence or anything, but it was still more than you would have seen in like one of the old code compliant Elliot Ness pictures or anything, where people would just get shot and fall.
Well, it also needed to illustrate, I think, why the stakes were so high.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Broken, desperate to get out of town, Joe and Jerry disguise themselves as women named Josephine and Daphne so they can join Sweet Sue, Joan Shawley, and her Society Syncopators, an all-female band headed to Miami. One thing that skips over is after the place gets raided, they sneak out and escape, but they're established as really, really poor guys who desperately need a gig, and so they go to their agent's office, who has this gig available for a lady saxophone and a lady bass player, and Joe comes up with this idea. He comes up with the idea, well, why can't we do it? We played in a gypsy band and we wore earrings. Remember that? And he's trying to sell Tony Curtis on the idea, and Tony's just like, no, this is ridiculous.
And we were in the Hawaiian band. We wore grass skirts.
Yes.
Right?
It was this thing where, like, they desperately needed the gig, and the gig was really well paying, and it was on all expenses paid trip to Florida, but they just couldn't do it. But then they go and they witness the gangland slayings, and they have to make themselves scarce. So that's when they decide, okay, we're gonna dress up like women.
And they get on the train, and it's fantastic. Just the sight gag of the two of them running in these seam stockings and heels on the train platform. Is just
they're talking, and all of a sudden, Joe is speaking in the lady voice, and then they cut to the two of them on the train platform walking. Mm-hmm. And do you see them from the back, or do you see them from the front first?
You see them from the back first.
Right,
Yeah.
and then you see them from the front.
You see the back and the seams on the stockings.
Oh, my God.
And but it's this hilarious bit that's this running thing through the film too, where they're both kind of, they've got that Lothario thing going, where they really like women, and they end up like ogling women while trying to pass as one of them, and that becomes part of the gag. Yeah, they board a train with the band and its male manager, Beanstalk, Dave Barry. Joe and Jerry notice Sugar Cane, Marilyn Monroe, the band's vocalist and ukulele player. Joe and Jerry become enamored of Sugar and compete for her affection while maintaining their disguises, which gets into all sorts of interesting areas, especially for the time.
Uh-huh.
Sugar confides to Joe that she has sworn off male saxophone players who have stolen her heart in the past and left her with, quote, the fuzzy end of the lollipop.
I squeezed out tube of toothpaste in the fuzzy end of the lollipop.
They're pretty amazing metaphors.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they really are. She has set her sights on finding a sweet, bespectacled millionaire in Florida. She specifies all these things. Like,
oh, yes.
She falls for saxophone players particularly, and she wants a guy with glasses because men with glasses are both gentler, and it's because they've sprained their eyes reading all those little columns in the Wall Street Journal. So therefore, they're businessmen. Like it really makes use of the whole Marilyn Monroe character well, I think.
So I've never traveled on a sleeper train.
Nor have I.
But
some friends of ours have.
But I'm reasonably willing to assume that you can't fit that many people in one berth.
I'm not sure you can't. I'm not sure. Don't forget that the berth was where you put your luggage, and it was very crowded. Mm-hmm. And they were sitting close together, and it was kind of like the stateroom scene.
Yes, in Night at the Opera.
Right, absolutely. I'm just thinking, like, how 11 women, 10 women and Jack Lemmon.
But why do you think they were hanging off the edges?
No, absolutely.
Right. Yeah, during the forbidden drinking and partying on the train, Josephine and Daphne become intimate friends with Sugar and must struggle to remember that they are supposed to be girls and cannot make passes at her. But it's this big deal in the film that Sweet Sue forbids her girls from both drinking and men. These are the two deal breakers. And that's how Joe first bonds with Sugar. Is she's established as drinking all the time, and her hip flask falls out, and Sweet Sue's about to throw her off the train for it, and he goes, "Oh, that's mine," and covers for her, and that's how they become closer.
Yes,
that's right. So she owes him because he's covered for her, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but watching Jack Lemmon squeezed in with all these women in their PJs drinking Manhattans out of a hot water bottle.
Yeah.
The cocktail shaker.
The cocktail shaker.
Yeah, they all come armed with their own hidden bottles of booze, and someone brings cheese and crackers.
Right. And what was it that Marilyn Monroe said? Is that everybody drinks, I'm the only one who gets caught.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. They drop an ice cube down Jack Lemmon's back, and he's screaming, and they're like poking and prodding at him, like they start tickling him, and finally, to avoid being tickled, and also I think to preserve his disguise, he pulls the emergency brake on the train, which leads to a great like the stateroom scene where they're all just tumbling out of this upper berth.
Right. Which I always found odd simply because with all the noise and all the laughing and all that Sweet Sue did not know that there was something going on before the train stopped.
Maybe she was in a different car.
No, she wasn't. She and Beanstalk were at the end of the car.
Oh, okay. Yeah. No, I know. But
It was the rule of funny.
yes.
Yeah,
absolutely.
no question. No question.
Once in Miami, Joe woos Sugar by assuming a second disguise as Millionaire Junior, the heir to Shell Oil, while feigning indifference to her. An actual millionaire, the much-married, aging mama's boy, Osgood Fielding III, Joe E. Brown, tries repeatedly to pick up Daphne, who rebuffs him. This leads to a whole, okay, this movie is of its time, and it's a classic, but also it's got this weird combination of both 20s and 50s attitudes towards things like consent and, the agency of a woman when someone's got his eyes on her.
Yeah, and I think about when that little bellhop was like, "Don't even worry about keeping the door open for me. I've got a passkey." Oh my God.
Yeah, today that would be that would instantly get you on lists.
Yeah.
But back then it was a nice throwaway gag in a comedy film.
It was a nice throwaway gag, and we've had this discussion before. Is that you learned there were people that you simply would not be alone with. There were people that you would not get on an elevator with, or you get off on the next floor. I mean, that business with, the slap and then the elevator coming down, right? I think that was really not so far-fetched.
Right, and in some ways it could be seen as really progressive and fair for its time, where it's showing these men learning what it's like to be treated like everyone treats women in this day and age.
Right.
But on the other hand, they're doing it too, and they're still the heroes of the movie.
It's a very fascinating dichotomy. And when that first night, when Joe comes back after having been out with Sugar all night, and Daphne is there with the maracas, and she's like, "I'm engaged."
But that whole scene where she's so happy and she's playing the maracas and she's dancing around, I could watch that over and over and over again.
Yes, again.
Tango.
We'll get there.
Right.
We'll get there. This bit's coming up. Osgood invites Daphne for a champagne supper on his yacht, New Caledonia. Joe convinces Daphne to keep Osgood occupied on shore so that Junior can take Sugar to Osgood's yacht, passing it off as his. So he's passing himself off as the millionaire who owns the yacht, so he can woo Marilyn. Meanwhile, Joe, Jack Lemmon, is stuck with this dippy millionaire, tangoing the night away, and so afterward, and again, funny things about consent, because he gets Marilyn onto the boat and they have a wonderful night, and he's keeping up this character, this Cary Grant spoof the whole time. But it keeps cutting over to Jack Lemmon and Osgood. They're tangoing and having a really great time and dancing really well. And then so when Tony Curtis comes back in the window the next morning after dropping off Marilyn, and Jack Lemmon's just dancing around their room like a lady who's just been successfully wooed and is really thrilled about the whole thing. And it's really fascinating to watch something made in that time portraying it at all.
It's fantastic. What kind do you think my fiance's a bum?
Because it just keeps on getting funnier and funnier.
Yeah, I mean he's. Jerry is really invested in being Daphne at this point, and it's just fantastic. And when they were on the train, Joe had said to him, "Just keep telling yourself, I'm a girl.
Yes.
I'm a girl. I'm a girl."
Yes.
So he's sitting there, "I'm a girl. I wish I was dead. I'm a girl." And then during this whole morning afterglow thing, just keep telling yourself, "You're a boy."
Yes.
I said, "I'm a boy. I'm a boy. I wish I was dead."
It's a wonderful.
It's just
gag.
the nice, really. It's the bookends on that are just brilliant.
Right, but the way the dialogue goes back and forth, he's got an answer for everything, and it's all going to work out. I didn't expect it to last.
Yeah. He's like, I'll tell him, I'll tell him the truth after the wedding, and we'll immediately get it annulled, and he'll give me a nice alimony, and he's really invested in this plan, not even thinking of the logistics.
Why would you do such a thing? Security.
Security.
Why would a guy marry a guy?
And then when
security.
there's Tony Curtis is trying to talk him out of it and going like, this just isn't done. There are laws and
conventions. Right.
It's really amazing, especially watching this today. But yeah, watching a movie in the 50s made about the 20s, they're talking about it in this manner.
And it's also not in the same vein as like Grease, which was just like rose-colored glasses nostalgia.
Yeah, no.
And this is not.
But there's another thing about this movie is, unless I'm mistaken, the stock market had not yet crashed.
There's a great line in the beginning when Tony Curtis is trying to talk Jack Lemmon into letting him gamble, and he's like, suppose this happens. Suppose the Dodgers leave Brooklyn. Suppose Mary Pickford and Douglas Fairbanks get divorced.
Exactly.
Suppose the stock market crashes.
Right.
Of course, all these things really happen.
Exactly. It was done so. It was, again, that dialogue was just amazing.
Yeah. The dialogue could not have been tighter in this movie.
Again,
even allowing for like certain stars' inability to learn lines.
Again, a hallmark of Billy Wilder movies. The dialogue was sharp and snappy, and it moved, and you really needed to stick with it, or you're going to miss something that you were going to enjoy.
Absolutely. It was
Very,
just
very
wound
true.
up really tight and wonderfully. Yeah, once on the yacht, Junior explains to Sugar that psychological trauma has left him impotent and frigid, but that he would marry anyone who could change that. And Sugar tries to arouse sexual response in Junior and begins to succeed. Listeners, I'm reading this in front of my mother-in-law. And
But watching him in that scene,
Yeah.
trying to pretend that he's not
yeah,
whatever.
Trying to pretend that he's being kissed by Marilyn Monroe, and he's trying to pretend that it does nothing for him.
So he just keeps eating cold pheasant because he's trying to...
But then the way he starts phrasing it, like sometimes Mother Nature throws you a curveball and stuff. Like you could interpret this as talking about things that they did not talk about in movies back then.
That is also very true.
That's right.
And in addition to the whole drag angle, and it's a fascinating example of film. Meanwhile, Daphne and Osgood dance the tango, La Comparsita, till dawn. When Joe and Jerry get back to the hotel, Jerry announces that Osgood has proposed marriage to Daphne and that he, as Daphne, has accepted. Anticipating an instant divorce and huge cash settlement when his ruse is revealed, Joe convinces Jerry that he cannot actually marry Osgood.
Can we pause for 1 second? So when Daphne tells Osgood she can't go out on the boat, I get seasick.
Yes.
And he's like, no, we'll go out on the boat. She's like, I'm going to throw up. So
Yeah.
he's like, okay.
Yeah.
So we'll go out, blindfold the band, and tango till dawn. Mm-hmm. And as they keep cutting back and forth between Junior and Sugar on the boat, and Daphne and Osgood doing the tango. And at the end, the entire room has been cleared up. There are chairs on the tables. It's very clearly closing time. They're dancing around. You quick cut back to the band who are all blindfolded and shout "Olé!" Like it's just
It's amazing. And that was something else. Like even saying like I might throw up, that I don't think that was a phrase that you were allowed to use in Hays Code times. And in the beginning, when they're talking about the other girl band members who aren't available, one of them is said to have gotten herself pregnant. Even saying that in a movie was a big deal. I mean, this wasn't too far from like I Love Lucy having to say that like she's in the family way or she's expecting.
She's expecting.
Yes. If you're interested in sort of the limitations and censorship and stuff going on in cinema at the time, this is an especially fascinating film for that, because none of this would have gone over if they tried to make it a code film. The hotel hosts a conference for Friends of Italian Opera, which is in fact a major meeting of the National Crime Syndicate presided over by Little Bonaparte, Nehemiah Persoff. This was hilarious. As an Italian boy, I really dig all the Italian gags in this. Yeah, of course, all the mobsters are the Friends of Italian Opera.
We was with you at Rigoletto's.
Yes, exactly. Spatz and his gang from Chicago recognize Joe and Jerry as the witnesses to the Valentine's Day murders. Joe and Jerry, fearing for their lives, realize they must quit the band and leave the hotel. Joe breaks Sugar's heart by telling her that he, Junior, must marry a woman of his father's choosing and move to Venezuela. Joe and Jerry evade Spatz' men by hiding under a table at the syndicate banquet. Little Bonaparte has Spatz and his men killed at the banquet. Again, Joe and Jerry are witnesses, and they flee through the hotel. Joe, dressed as Josephine, sees Sugar on stage singing that she will never love again. He kisses her before he leaves, and Sugar realizes that Joe is both Josephine and Junior. And the slapstick of like running away from the mobsters in the hotel and everything is just so wonderfully done in this movie. I love it so much.
and also the makeup. Mm-hmm. Like
Yes.
Tony Curtis in a wig.
It's the wigs, the wig, the beasting lips.
But Tony Curtis in a wig without the makeup when he when he rushes the bandstand at the end.
Yes.
You're like, oh, wait. They were fully wearing makeup this entire movie.
Right.
And it's frustrating. Jack Lemmon and Tony Curtis walk better in heels than I do. They're better at makeup than I am. And,
Yes.
I've been a girl my whole life.
Tony Curtis was a prettier girl than Jack Lemmon was.
Absolutely.
No
But
question.
Jack Lemmon's voice, Jack Lemmon did the voice so much better.
he did.
Yeah.
He did.
And-
it
and
didn't
just-
sound as fake.
Just see the wigs and the facial expressions and everything when they're in character as the women. I cannot say enough about how much I love all of this. And again, like really mind blowing considering when they made this. The scene where the man in drag kisses Marilyn, just even portraying that sort of thing when the audience knows full well that it's a man and a woman, it's still kind of like, whoa. And of course, this movie got all kinds of protests against it. And I think the Roman Catholics labeled it as objectionable.
Was this banned?
It was not banned, but it was marked objectionable.
Objectionable
morally
for all.
objectionable
Yeah.
for all.
Right.
Something to that effect. Last paragraph here. Jerry persuades Osgood to take Daphne and Josephine away on his yacht. Sugar runs from the stage at the end of her performance and jumps on board Osgood's launch just as it is leaving the dock with Joe, Jerry, and Osgood. Joe tells Sugar that he's not good enough for her, that she would be getting the fuzzy end of the lollipop yet again, but Sugar wants him anyway. Her line, of course, is like that she said earlier in the movie, and she repeats at the end when she kisses Tony Curtis again, is just like, I'm just not very intelligent.
That's what she says.
Again, kind of weird ideas about consent and everything, that like she's basically been schmoozing with this person that she thought was a woman and that she was safe from all that man stuff with, and it turns out to be another guy who wants her, and she's just like, okay.
But it's interesting because, like, every other movie where someone has been assuming a different identity, and then you're like, wait, what? How have you been lying to me this whole time? And Sugar's just like, okay, you were pretending to be two different people.
Yes, you had two identities that were both faking me out in different ways.
But okay, sure,
yeah,
let's
but
do
okay.
this.
Go ahead, pour it on. I'm just not very bright.
Yes, I'm just not very bright. That was
Right.
it.
That's it.
Yes.
Right.
Meanwhile, Jerry is, and they're sitting in the back seats of the boat, going through this, and Jerry and Osgood are up in the front as Osgood's driving the boat away.
And Osgood
to
just
his
got
yacht.
this big dopey look on his face. Like,
Yeah,
he just
with
always
his
looks
big-
so big, dumb.
with his big crazy Muppet smile.
Yeah.
and
And he's happy because
yeah.
Daphne is running away with him. Right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And Mama is so happy she cried.
It says, meanwhile, Jerry lists reasons why Daphne and Osgood could not marry, ranging from a smoking habit to infertility. Osgood dismisses them all. He loves Daphne and is determined to go through with the marriage.
I've been living with a man. I forgive you. I mean,
Yeah,
it just
yeah.
whatever he comes up with.
I've been living with a saxophone,
With a saxophone player.
I forgive you.
Yeah, I can't have children. We'll adopt some. And, exasperated, Jerry removes his wig and shouts, I'm a man. Osgood, unfazed, simply responds, well, nobody's perfect. And then the end. Like that.
It's just, oh my goodness.
Yes.
It's just, and that was improvised. It's just such
Yeah.
a fantastic ending. And the look on Daphne's face.
Yeah, and like
So
Osgood's
is that-
still into it at the end.
So exasperated. Don't you get it?
And yeah, that's the end of the movie, and it is nuts and crazy and hilarious.
It's,
And
we thank you. Thank you for bringing this.
yes,
Thank you for watching it with me. It's so well done. It's so enjoyable. Go pick something and you're going to be rhapsodizing about it.
as someone who hasn't seen this movie since I think I must have been like 9 or 10 years old watching this on broadcast television, and I remember really liking it then, but on this viewing I realized how much went straight over my head as a kid, and it's still like, it's just so much more awesome than I remember, and I am so grateful you brought this, and I will definitely, like, this is one to revisit again at some point soon.
And it's interesting to me also in terms of the Irv of this podcast. I think if we like something, we don't always have a lot to say about it. This movie, I think, is the exception because it's just so good.
But there's so many facets that go into making it so good.
Yes, it's kind of a perfect storm of like perfect ingredients, and it's just a really, really wonderful thing.
There's a reason that the film has the reputation that it does, and there's a reason, or many reasons, that it is still as watchable and enjoyable in 2019 as I think it was in 1959.
And it's quick is the other thing. Sometimes I find that movies from that era don't move that well. This is just so...
But again, it had to.
Yeah,
It had, I mean, that, and that's part of what, I believe that's part of what went into making it so good.
Yeah.
it feels really quick because of how snappy and tightly wound everything is. It's 121 minutes long.
Seriously?
I thought it was 90 minutes, and it's not. It's not.
No, according to this, it's 121 minutes, and it does not feel like a 2-hour movie.
Not even a
There's
little.
no, you know what it is? There's no wasted space.
Yes.
Everything has a purpose. Everything is setting something else up. Right?
Yes.
Yeah. It's all very tightly plotted.
Daphne, what are you doing? Oh, just something I learned in the elevator. Clearly,
Yes.
he's pinched her. You don't know that.
Yeah. It's got callbacks, it's got fallbacks, everything is, something is happening everywhere else. And, even you get Chekhov's gas pump
Yes.
because, the attendant at the garage is filling up the car and they're hiding behind the car when the shooting happens. And then as he plugged the thing in, I'm like, there was not automatic shutoff on gas pumps in 1929.
No, I don't think there was in 1959. But yeah, so the gas pump beginning to overflow because the guy is filling the tank and he's just stunned and paralyzed because he's got all these gun-toting mobsters coming in and lining people up against the opposite wall.
But also the moment when they walk in with the bass case and the sax case, and the mobsters who are in there playing cards are like, "What are you guys trying to pull?" And they're like, "Oh, no, we're actually musicians."
Yeah, they open the cases and they're actually instruments in the instrument cases.
What are you trying to pull?
Which is a great goof on the guns in your instrument cases trope.
I remember learning, this is where I learned about that. I was a little kid, we were watching this movie, and I said, "Wait, what?" And Ema said, "Oh, yeah," because they would, at the beginning when they had all the alcohol in the coffin.
Yeah, they're bootleggers, and they've got this coffin that they're in a hearse. The first scene of the movie is they're in a hearse that's being chased by the cops, and the hearse gets shot at, and the coffin gets some bullet holes in it, which start leaking liquid, and then later they open it, and there's just bottles of booze. It's great. Just everything works really well, and if you have not seen this, listeners, we've just spoiled the entire movie for you, but
it's still worth it.
It's still worth a watch.
No matter how many times you've seen it before, you'll always find something new. I love a movie like that.
This is one of those movies where I was forbidden to recite the dialogue along with the actors.
By
ABBA.
Yeah, I was going to say Nana and Grandpa probably didn't care as much.
No.
Nana and Grandpa did it too.
No. But it's like I said when we were watching last night, is Marilyn Monroe is walking down the train platform, and I said, "Cue the steam."
Yes.
For me, the joy of watching this only intensifies every time I see it.
Absolutely.
And I know what's coming.
Yeah, but that almost makes it more fun.
It does make it more fun. It's like a little kid liking to hear a story read over and over and over again because they like the way they feel when they hear this word or this phrase. I like the way I feel when I watch this movie.
Yeah, no, we've all got those movies like that. I've shown you a couple on this podcast, Gila, which
Yes.
you were underwhelmed with, and that's fine. It's just this whole thing, and like as I think said a little bit about earlier, I'm not a Marilyn Monroe fan. I've seen her try and act in the more serious stuff she did, and it didn't really work for me. I don't really like her delivery, and she's got that big white hair, and it upsets me. But like, but she was awesome in this. Like this is a film I love.
This is the pinnacle of so much for so many.
We know it wasn't written for her, but she and the part are kind of you can't separate them.
No, it's like in those alternate universe like casting possibilities. Like if Jerry Lewis were one of the guys in this movie, this would be a Jerry Lewis movie,
right?
Yeah.
And Jack Lemmon and Tony Curtis were both like they weren't big like stars that would take control of the thing and take it in a direction. They were just really capable actors who did awesome things with the material.
Exactly.
And at this point in time, I believe Tony Curtis was the better known actor. This was before. I think The Apartment was the following year.
Yes.
Tony Curtis had done Houdini by this point in time. Spartacus was the following year.
Yes, I think so. Yeah.
Right. So he was the bigger star.
Yeah.
But yet the way they played off of each other was just way cool.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And with that, I think we'll wrap things up. I want to very, very, very gratefully thank our wonderful special guest, Susie Drazen, my dear mother-in-law, for joining us and for bringing this movie.
Yes, thank you, Emma, for being part of this. Thank you for volunteering to be our first in-studio guest.
Thank you for letting me intrude myself into your podcast.
So I think it goes without saying that all of the Fireflies,
Yeah,
our
way
standard
up.
Fireflies and Firefly in-law are just way up.
Yes, absolutely.
Way up in the stratosphere.
And so send us email. Tell us what you think about this movie and the things we've been saying about it. And send us your own thoughts at watches@modern.technology.
That's modern.technology. The top-level domain is technology.
So get in touch with us. Let us know what you think. And we will be able to actually read a mailbag type thing on our show instead of just having the writer of our email here.
So we'll see you at the movies. I'm going to keep saying it.
We will catch you next time.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye. You've been listening to episode 109 of Modern Technology Watches with Gila Drazen and Rob Vincent and special guest Susie Drazen. Go to modern.technology on the web for more info on this show, our other work, and our social media drag. Our music is The Promise by Torley Wong, released Creative Commons Attribution Share Alike 3.0. Find more from Torley at torley.com. Thank you, Torley. Content from wikipedia.org is used under Creative Commons Attribution Share Alike License 3.0. This podcast is released under Creative Commons Attribution Share Alike 4.0, produced by modern.technology. Send us email at watches@modern.technology. Hi, it's Rob again. In post-production, I noticed that earlier in the episode, Susie, my dear mother-in-law, had said something to the effect of, just remember who proposed to who, and the three of us laughed and said something like we should tell that story after the break, and then we didn't. We got so caught up in talking about the movie that we didn't tell the story, so now I'm going to tell you the short version. Some friends of our family have a cabin in the woods. They invite a bunch of family and friends, including us, on an annual basis, to have a nice little vacation. And it was during this that I had resolved, because Susie would be there, as well as my late father-in-law, the Rabbi Paul Drazen. They were both going to be there, I was going to be there, and I was going to basically ask the Drazens for their blessing in asking their daughter to marry me. And so I was psyching myself up for this. I was working up my courage because I was intimidated. Now, Paul and Susie were always delightful to me. They were always entirely warm and welcoming and just the sweetest in-laws you could ever want. But I was still intimidated. I'd never asked anyone to marry me before. I wasn't sure how this was all going to go, but I was determined. So without Gila knowing, I was going to take her parents aside and ask them for their blessing. And I was ready to do this. And then, at some point during the festivities, Susie took the initiative, pulled me and Gila away from the crowd, walked us into the woods a little, and basically asked me, "So, what are your intentions?" And basically proposing to me on behalf of Gila, in so many words, in an entirely nice and pleasant way, but still forceful, asking, what's the deal? What are you doing? You gonna do this thing or what? And I was dumbfounded. I was stunned. Because this is not what I had worked up my courage to deal with. And so I was just doing some smiling and nodding with my head sort of on a bobblehead spring. And it was not what I was prepared for. But I took that as a yes. And so sometime later on, I actually proposed to Gila. But that's another story.